Alright, today we're going to be taking you through a deck tech on Bant Slivers for Legacy. I think this deck's pretty great. Mostly it's just the 12 Muscle Slivers, which are the bread and butter of the deck, combined with Crystalline Sliver, which is awesome because most fair decks usually don't have a good way to beat that card. With the exception of Miracles, Terminus is a real problem, but outside of that, yeah, I mean, their lightning bolts and sword splashers and everything are really going to have a hard time because of this guy right here. Gale Rider Sliver adds an unblockable dimension to the deck. It's arguably better than Merfolk's version of Island Walk. They gain the advantage of all their lords giving them Island Walk, whereas we only have the 4 Gale Rider Slivers for flying. But I think flying is mostly better than Island Walk anyway. And the other great thing about playing Bant Slivers versus playing Merfolk is that you get to play with Brainstorm, which is, just the best card in Legacy, so that's pretty awesome. We also have our Counter Magic Suite, which is just 4 Force of Wills and 3 Dazes. We have 4 Swords to Plowshares in the deck right now. It might not need that many of them. It might only be like, you could probably run like 3 and like maybe main deck or Harmonic Sliver or something to that effect. Running 21 lands, I've been pretty happy with the mana base so far. Oh, right, and there's also 4 Aether Vials in the deck, which are, just pretty much a staple of any creature-based deck. So, yeah. I've been pretty happy with the mana base so far, running the 8 fetch lands and then the 6 dual lands. We have a pretty even mana spread, so, I mean, let's just do a color sort really fast. So you can see we're a little bit heavier on blue than anything else, but most of these spells are actually free anyway, so not counting those, it's pretty evenly spread. So I'm running just the 2 Savannah, 2 Tropical Island, 2 Tundra right now. I'm not sure if that's ideal, but it's been working out pretty well so far. Also running 3 Wastelands. That was just because I didn't really want to run 22 lands in this deck. And with the 8 fetches and the 4 Mutavaults, like, you really don't have much more room. We could potentially cut one of the dual lands for the 4th Lake Wasteland at some point. In the sideboard, we have Aethersworn Canonists for mostly for Storm, but also pretty good against just combo decks at large. Yeah, board them in against Reanimator, Show and Tell, even. They're pretty good for that, because if you have the Canonist in play, then that basically means that they can't counter your spells back. So, like, if they cast a Show and Tell or a Reanimate or whatever it is, and you Force of Will it, they can't Force of Will you back. So that's a nice thing there. We also have a playset of Path to Exiles in the board, particularly good against Delver decks because they're not running any basics usually, so they end up just being 1 mana exile target creature. Most of the times when I board in the paths, I don't board out Swords to Plowshares. I'll just board up to the full 8, because it's usually a matchup where I don't want Force of Will or I don't want Daze, depending on if I'm on the play or the draw. We have a little bit more counter magic, again, mostly for combo decks, but also I'll bring in the counter suite against like Miracles because we're bringing out the Swords to Plowshares. We have 1 Karakas in the board, which is good for getting rid of any like Grizzlebrands or Embercools or what have you, but also it's nice to be able to bounce our own Gaddock Teeg against Miracles. So we definitely board that in against Miracles, and who knows, we might just even Mize and be able to get rid of a Vendilion Clique that was trying to block or whatever. Grafdigger's Cage is the Graveyard Hate that I'm choosing because not only does it work as Graveyard Hate against Dredge and Reanimator, but it's also pretty solid against Elves because it shuts off their Green Sun Zeniths and their natural orders. So that's why I've chosen to go with Grafdigger's Cage over anything else like Surgical Extraction or Relic of Progenitus or what have you. Or even Rest in Peace, since we're running a white deck that's not really using the graveyard in any meaningful way. But yeah, so that's the deck. I think it's pretty good. It functions similarly to Merfolk, but I think that this is really the big card that sells me on playing Slivers over Merfolk. In addition to the fact that Merfolk actually has pretty bad mana. It sounds weird considering it's a mono blue deck, but they're running, 6 or 8 colorless lands, and all double blue spells for the most part. So the mana, your draws can get fairly awkward with Merfolk. So I really like this deck. I hope that you guys get a chance to give it a shot. It's a blast to play, and I think it's pretty well positioned right now. So.